Hello all. Today I was thinking we're gonna talk about one of my favorite games of all time, uh, Hardwar, created by this is kind of an people always say this is an elite clone, but it's very much bigger in concept than that, which we're going to talk about, and it's very underrated game. So this game was released in 1998, and it was released by Gremlin in the European regions, Interplay in the US, created by the Software Refinery. Lavish box art, this one. So I brought out my original box here. I'm thinking I'm going to start doing this more, like showing off some of the boxes where the boxes are worth showing, and this one is definitely one of those. So before we get into talking about the game, so let's talk about Software Refinery. Software Refinery was founded in 1993 in Leeds in England, in the UK, and Kieran Gultniks, who had previously created games like Air Duel and Strike Aces, handled like design and programming. Mark Griffiths, a graphics guy, and Ian Martin was also a co-creator, who also worked on flight simulation games before, and he was also in design and programming. And as you will hear about later, Ian Martin was still very much involved in this game even after its demise. So the company itself, Software Refinery, vanished in 2002, but their most famous game is probably Slipstream 5000 for the PC, released in 1995, which is a hovercraft racing game with like tunnels and things that you go through for MS-DOS, which you can see where the technology for Hardwar has its origins there. And they also released Excalibur 2555 AD in 1997, 3D action game in third person, quite crappy game actually, to be honest, and then Hardwar in 1998. So they always had a high technical proficiency and very much an interest for 3D programming, so to speak. So the 3D algorithms and so on. This lavish box, which I'm thinking that we're going to talk a bit about before we look at the game itself, designed by the Designers Republic. This is the Euro box, which is much nicer than the black, quite generic US box, but the Euro box, designed by the Designers Republic, based in Sheffield, UK, of Wipeout fame. So the whole aesthetic in Wipeout was the Designers Republic, right? And very famous within the, like in this era, within the rave scene, which was big at the time. So it's a gorgeous box. Very, very, very well looking box. Originally a DOS game, but this is a Windows game. It was converted, the engine was converted to a Windows game, and I just love this Designers Republic box. I wish it would be picked up better by the camera, but there's a lot of like these trademark Designers Republic stuff with the fonts and like the futuristic designs. So it's like the system requirements. Let's look at the system requirements for a second. So the system requirements is a Windows 95, a Pentium class CPU, and 16 megabytes of RAM. You need DirectX 5. This is very much, it has direct 3D support, but this is very much a glide game, very much catered to the best effects you will get with a 3DFX card. So it supports glide and 3DFX natively. You need a CD drive and preferably an analog joystick. You will see why later. And you have a 3D accelerator is of course highly recommended. It's not needed because it has a software mode, but it's definitely recommended. So this beautiful box, also the folds out like that, and then you have like the embossed Gremlin, the box that Gremlin used for all kinds of their games. There's not much in the box. It's actually, oh, I can win 250 pounds worth of Gremlin games. Yeah, maybe not. Gremlin catalog, lots of interesting stuff in this actually. Hardcore 4x4, which is actually quite a good game. And then you have the CD itself with the manual. This is also a Designers Republic style thing, with the manual also, and the game itself on two CD-ROMs, which you will install from, and then also subsequently patch this game, because playing this unpatched is pretty much hell on earth because of the lots of bugs and stuff in this one. So gorgeous box with a gorgeous box art and a gorgeous aesthetic, which also carries over into the game. So that's what the box looks like. Now if we go to, now let's look at the machine I will use to play it. So I unpacked this from all of my piles of stuff, and I choose this machine because it has this machine is called Gretchen. Why I don't remember, but for some reason. In this machine we find pretty much the ideal spec for this game. We have a Pentium 3 933 megahertz slot processor. We have 256 rather megabytes of RAM, and we have, most of all, we have a 3DFX Voodoo 3 graphics card, which will give us the glide support that Hardwar thrives on. And a Sound Blaster AWE64 sound card. So this should give us pretty much the optimal spec to run the game, also in glide mode, and then I will run it through the capture device as per usual. So this is the hardware I will use to play it. It is very much playable on lower spec hardware as well, and on modern machines, but this is the one I will use. So, what kind of game is Hardwar then? Well, it's kind of like Elite, the space trading fighting exploration sim, or if you will, kind of like Wing Commander Privateer, if you remember that one. However, it takes place on the surface of one of Saturn's moons, Titan. So the premise is basically that a long while back humanity established a mining colony there, now named Misplaced Optimism, because after a while the mining operation was left stranded, and the whole society that had grown up around it was stranded with it. So from this, the struggling people left on Titan kept on living in their bubble, with its own factions vying for power and economy taking shape. So transports between the different craters that make up the mining colony is handled either by the use of the monorail system or by piloting so-called moths, which are surface ships powered by light. So since light is not really passing through the thick layer of atmospheric smog on Titan, they are recharged at a charging station. So Misplaced Optimism has its own police force trying to keep law and order in what is more or less a lawless wasteland. But to be fair, the police is mostly interested in their own power rather than actually upholding some sort of moral code of conduct. So the player
will create a new persistent world file, choose a starting career, which would influence what kind of moth type and gear you would start out with, and then you're dropped into a hangar on Titan, free to follow your own whims. So now there is plot in the background, where sometimes you will receive information from different media stations owned by the different factions in the game that will detail some shady business with restricted areas and secret technology that could potentially be a way off the colony. So the player is free to explore this mystery at their own leisure and can ally with one of the factions should they wish to do so. However, you can also largely ignore it, but sometimes special things happen in the game world based on the plot. So knowing how to exploit that is a good way to get some benefits. So the gameplay itself consists of flying your moth between hangars situated around the mining colony, which is decided it's divided in sectors separated by tunnels. So in hangars you can read news, buy supplies and weapons, trade goods on the local market, and get missions of various kinds. For example, you can be a trader, where you buy low and sell high, or responding to corporations calling out for a certain trade good that you can then obtain for them for a good profit. Or you can go look at the police list of outstanding bounties and track these people down, gun them down, and collect the rewards. So you could also engage in the factions. If you go around to their HQs, do jobs for them, or why not just be an outright outlaw, and you can stalk poor traders looking for a good opportunity to blow them up and steal their stuff. Another interesting career choice in the game is that of the scavenger. So this playstyle focuses on waiting for others to fight, to then sweep in and collect the scrap metal from the wreckage, so you can sell it for profit. And this means you would probably want to tag along when you see police or bounty hunters, because they are likely going to gun someone down at some point, so that you can then leech off of it. So you can freely combine all ways of making a living during a playthrough, and you can buy your own hangars, so you can store different mods with different loadouts to use in different situations. So you also have to manage your defensive systems, and remember to stop from time to time at a charge pod to recharge your mods. So you basically zip around back and forth, upgrading your mod, doing tasks and exploring the world. Running out of juice mid-flight means that you are stranded, so that's why you need to recharge. So all in all, the game is totally open-ended, yet at the same time manages to be plot-driven. So the world feels alive and completely open to exploration, and the mood of the game is also very special in that it really gives off a vibe of decadence and isolation, which is fitting for the background setting. So about this persistent world then. So the persistent world and the AI systems are what really set this game apart at the time, and that is still the case to a large extent. So the programming of the game itself is a remarkable feat of engineering for the time, as it features not only fully dynamic economy where goods and items will change in availability and thus price as they get traded by different parties, but it also features a fully dynamic AI actor model. So now this was much hyped at the lead up to the game's release, and for good reason, because it was, according to the team, also the reason to go with the confined play area instead of going with interstellar travel and space, since since that is what allows it to be feasible to do these advanced systems. So what this does is have all the other mods you encounter they're piloted by actual AI actors, and they're consistently existing. So it's not a random spawned unit in the game world, but it's an actual AI actor going about its business. So they go trade and fight and take on missions and so on. And if you follow them around, you can see each of them, and they have their names visible on your HUD. You can see them go about their business. So some of them may have their own hangars, and you can see them go park in there for the night, for example. So if you wait until morning, they will come back out. And this is actually a thing in the missions involving bounty hunting, because you can actually learn the habits of your specific target and then plan your strike on them. And they go about all of this en masse without your intervention, more or less. So unlike most other games, you can leave the game world alone and it will evolve by itself, completely dynamic and organically. So each playthrough will generate a slightly different state of the world for this reason. So this is a system that far trumps even most modern games that mostly still rely on the spawn a unit when needed approach. So Hardwar keeps an entire world and dynamic system running in the background regardless of your input. And this is what makes it so technically impressive, and in subsequent patches this was also further refined. So it also leads to a lot of interesting things, like for example, if you can find out the exact person that is the main supplier of a certain item, then you can track him or her and see where they get this item from and how they trade, and then you can either attack them and take over the route, or you can simply start undercutting them or blocking them in some way from trading. Or you might pick up a name of some outlaw in like the message shatter who might know about some cool artifact thing, only to see this guy go by in a tunnel, and you decide to track him for a few days to see if he exposes to you where this cool thing is located. It's a very, very impressive system, which is basically what the game is all about, are these dynamic systems. So and apart from the AI and like dynamic economy being hugely impressive, the visuals of the game was also seen as state of the art at the time. It started as an MS-DOS game. Some prototypes are known to exist of this, but it's never been seen publicly, but likely looked a bit like Slipstream 5000, I would suppose, but then it was switched to a Windows game and also became very much a game catered to 3DFX circuitry and the Glide API, but it also supports Direct 3D. So 3D acceleration was a big thing, and as you might remember, in the later parts of the 90s, this was the really big thing, and this game really went for that. So it looks stunning, and for once the good old 90s 3D fog effect is actually fitting for the atmosphere they are going for, where they add, like, normally you have this fog effect to hide polygons to reduce render load, but in this case it actually works with the setting. So another famous one with that is probably Turok, which you've probably seen, the insane fogging in Turok, which is worse than this, but in this case it actually works with the atmosphere. So there's loads of nice effects and colored lights, and the frame rate is decent even on something like a Pentium 200 if you have a good accelerator card, which is a testament to the quality of the rendering engine itself. So The game engine also makes use of some neat overlay effects for things like the HUD and so on, with transparency effects and things like that. So further, it's not only technically impressive, but the whole futuristic styling of the packaging itself is carried over into the game. So it simply blends together very nicely, and even today manages to look stylish and kind of alien dystopic. So buildings are suitably gloomy towerscapes with searchlights that rise above this barren landscape, and tunnel systems with their artificial lighting are very eerie when you travel through them. And then there's of course the moths, which unlike spaceships, they have this like hovercraft wipeout like design to them. So it looks believable, and it like manages to immerse you even now. So it's got a very unique aesthetic to it, which is very pleasing and feels very unique. All this open-endedness of the game world is, however, a slight problem when starting out, as the game features very little in-game assistance and practically drops you off to fend for yourself. So it doesn't explain any of the mechanics or systems in the game, and you're basically left to figure it out on your own. So that might be a slight hurdle to overcome when you are new to the game, but it also adds to the feeling of excitement as you discover new things on your own. So in general, the game is hard. It won't do you any favors, and to make it in the game you have to both understand the world around you but also be a bit clever in exploiting its quirks. And don't even for a second think that you can just do the plot things to see the storyline, if that would interest you, because the background plot missions are extremely tough at times. So you really need to understand the game fully to be able to reach a level of proficiency and gear that allows you to tackle these missions and to follow the plot. So now it's not mandatory to invest all that much time into the plot, but I assume that you would at least want to see a bit of it the first time you play. The game didn't sell all that well, and despite reviewing favorably, it kind of faded into obscurity. However, there was a dedicated and loyal following that formed around this game. So Software Refinery went out of business, but the game still had a group of people running websites filled with different types of lore and unofficial updates, some of which are still active to this day. So the game also has a multiplayer component where you can run a persistent world file together with other players, which was used extensively by these internet communities. So it can be seen as mandatory to install the official updates and patches, as they not only fix bugs, but they also add features that are not in the initial release version. One of the developers and Software Refinery founders, Ian Martin, also for a long time continued to work on the code, producing a series of optional UIM patches to the game, even after the game and eventually the studio itself ceased to be a thing. So Ian kept plugging away with additional patches. So there are 6 such updates released after the commercial life of the game. So these add new features to the economy, AI updates, and other things that Ian Martin felt was in the original vision, but that didn't make it due to scheduling deadlines, and also his continued evolution of the dynamic AI. Cedo's Lair is a hardware fan site that has been online for many years, and it's still online in its original form, and it contains all of these updates, information about the game world, different player made updates and so on. So it's very much an underdog product but very much loved by its fan base. And it was made by a very talented team with some grand visions. Today, the game is rarely ever mentioned anywhere, but it really should be because of its innovations in AI and the open-ended game worlds, of which there was very few back in the late 90s. So it's also a very stylish game and has like a mysterious charm to it that will suck you into this alien world. And the very open-ended nature and practically non-existent hand-holding leads to an experience where you feel like you are truly discovering the game world at your own pace and you're learning new things as you go. These days, many games are like, come on, like go here, look at this cool thing I have here. Whereas this is more you finding some alien-looking artifact at the bottom of some chasm completely by chance, and then given no explanation about what it is, how it works, or if it's even useful. And then you may try to extract it, only to get blown to bits by some mysterious shadow actor who's been watching you all along, who you also don't know who it is. So again, with no explanation of what and why. And that is the charm with this game. It's that you exist in the game world. The game world doesn't exist as a backdrop for you. You're just a small cog in the game world, together with all the dynamic AI cogs that inhabit the same world space. So at times it's super frustrating, but it's also brilliant, and it's a truly special experience. And you can see this whole argument around why designing the game around more confined space adds to this feel. Sadly, the game is not available in any stores in digital form today. And while it's been an ongoing request from fans for many years to have the source code fully released, it hasn't happened yet. However, the original copy will run fine on modern systems natively in Direct 3D. You can use Windows XP compatibility, and that should fix most of the issues. Or if you use a glide wrapper, it will also happily run in the much superior 3dFX Glide render mode. So if you can obtain an original copy and the patches, you can play it very well also on your modern system. If you want to play it on a retro system, you should have something like what I used here. You should have a beefier Pentium 2 or Pentium 3 system with a 3dFX card, preferably a Voodoo 3 card for enough render power to up the resolution a little bit. A joystick is also highly recommended for a playthrough, by the way, because while you can control this with the keyboard, it's not ideal. You need some sort of analog input. And all in all, this is one of my favorite experiences in all of gaming due to this mesmerizing open world design and the intricate lifelike AI systems. And it's definitely an underdog that you should check out, because it's a very, very special experience. So if you can, if you get the possibilities, you should definitely check out Hardwar.